Alrighty, so let's talk about tablature. So tablature, again, I like to call it the karaoke version of reading music. So if you hover over here on the left side, just to make sure, can everybody see okay? Okay, so this is how tablature is set up. So the very first line at the very top is the first string. So that's a string that's the one, again, closest to the ground. And that's the E string. And then the next line is the second string, third string, fourth string, fifth string, sixth string. So the difference between tablature and chords is this is more for kind of like the lead guitar or the melody that carries the song. So it's not the strumming aspect of it, but really a thing on the side. So how you use tablature is they put these numbers on the corresponding lines. So this number 1 signifies that we play the first fret once. So we have that finger there. Let me move it here so I can do it better. So that number 1 is string number 1 in fret number 1. And we're going to use our index finger. So we just hit that one time. So again, string number 1 in fret number 1, and we play that just once. So once we have that 1 right there, we can go down to the 3rd fret on that same string. Since we have that line, we're staying on that same string. And we're gonna use actually our ring finger, and we're gonna skip our middle finger there. So how that sounds, it would be just one note, one note. And from that example, since we already have a ring finger on the 3rd fret, we can move this ring finger up 1 into the 2nd string and pluck that once. So once again, that would be at least in the very first 3 notes. And keep going with that example, we have that. And then we can have now we can use our middle finger, our 2nd finger, and put it in that 3rd string of the 3rd fret afterwards. So it would be 1, 3, 3, 2, and then to finish it off, we go back with our index finger on the 2nd string, hit that once, and then open, and then open again with that first line. At least in the beginning, we're gonna kind of assign frets to our fingers. So anytime we see a number 1, we're gonna use our index finger. Anytime we see a 2, we're gonna use our middle finger. And anytime we see a 3, we're gonna use our ring finger. Alrighty. So that's kind of the simplest version of it right now. But any questions about how the lines are set up or what the numbers mean? Alrighty. So in the last sessions, we talked about chords, but I'm going to talk about chords too. But chords can also be represented in tab form. The only kind of difficulty, I'll share a chord guide too for Catherine and talk about that too a little bit. But it doesn't tell you which fingers to use. So I wouldn't focus on tablature to, at least in the beginning, learn chords, because you can learn chords better using chord charts. But for example, in figure 3, that would be an E major. Let me share the E major page here. Right there. Let me hover over. So this E major right there is very similar to the tablature, where it's that 0, 0, 1, 2, 2, 0, if that makes sense. Because the tablature is only telling you which fingers to use on which strings and which frets, but the chord chart allows you to read it a lot easier, especially in the beginning. So I'm actually going to go over this chord chart just as a quick review. So if we hover over and look at this E minor 7, we have a couple of things. So on the very right side, this will be representative of our first string. So this is our first string. And this little kind of empty circle means that we have it open. So same thing with the second, third, fourth. But once we get to the fifth, then we have to press down our second finger, which is our middle finger, on that second fret. And then we have the sixth string open. So how that looks like is it's literally just our middle finger on the second fret of the second fret of the fifth string. So the big difference is with chords, we're strumming everything. But with tablature and single notes, it is just really that one single note that you're playing at a time. So let me go back to tabs one more time. So this very first line is kind of a good exercise to, well, all tabs are kind of good exercises for building muscle strength with your finger and learning to kind of move faster in all the frets. So for example, the very first line, we have the number 1 4 times. So how we do that is that we're gonna pluck. We can, at least at the beginning, just start with down, just down strums. We're gonna do that 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then move our middle finger into the second fret of the first string still. And then go back to the 3, and then use our pinky for the 4th fret. And then we're just gonna come back up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And the objective of this is to make sure that you have the same amount of pressure every time that you pluck. And learn to pluck in unison and at the same tempo. So as soon as you start getting the cleaner tones, then you can start speeding up and start moving your fingers a little faster. So this exercise is great because you don't only have to stay in that first string. You can move that exercise on any string that you want. Alrighty, let's see. So with the exercise of up and down, you want to go down with your thumb and go up with your index finger. So for example, you would do the 1, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And you want to make sure that your notes are bright and there's no kind of clankiness to it. So anytime that we fret a single fret, we want to make sure that you can kind of see in my outline of my finger that it's kind of a little bit below the fingernail. And this is where if you have, again, long fingernails on your left hand, it's bad news. Just because when you have kind of long fingernails, when you fret down, the fingernail kind of pushes back against the wood. So if you have long fingernails, it can be difficult to do that. So I would recommend trimming those nails, at least for the left hand. The right hand, you can just stay, whatever. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and any questions about how to read this, if it's confusing or if it makes sense. Alrighty. So why tabs is a great question. Tablature allows us to learn without having to learn music notation, because I have never learned to read music, which is not something I'm proud of, but eventually I will get there. But let me talk about Ultimate Guitar again, because this is really about you trying to find what you want to play, ultimately. So all these workshops are just tools that you can use so that you can find your own songs. So let me go ahead and just say, I'll put this also in the chat. So for those that don't know, Ultimate Guitar is a community. It's an online sharing website where people can put their artists or music that they're looking for, and people have made chord progressions that you can read how the chord changes, or the tabs that I want to discuss. So one of the kind of more beginner tabs is Smoke on the Water. And let's see if we can find an easy tab for Smoke on the Water. So right at the beginning, I typed in Smoke on the Water. I don't need to put the artist's title, but of course there's a lot of different covers of it. So I want to focus just on the deep purple one. So right here, I can also narrow down my search. So if I just want to do the chords for Smoke on the Water, I can do that. Or I can look up the individual tab, which is, again, that single notes that we're looking for. But if you also like bass or ukulele, there are also tabs. I don't know how it would sound on the uke, but that's okay. But I'm going to go ahead and over here to the right side. This is important because it gives us our ratings and the type. Since I'm only looking for tabs, let me first click on tabs. And we always want to focus on the ones that have the most stars in average. So there's a bunch of different, like this one just focuses on the intro, this one focuses on the solo, live versions, but I can see here that this one has 819. So I'm going to click on that and check that out. Ready? So this is a great example. Can everybody see this okay here? There we go. Perfect. Okay, so we have our first 6 lines, correct? So we have that high E on the very top, and we have that low E on the very bottom there. So there is nothing here, there's nothing here, there's nothing here, there's nothing here. Everything happens in here. So anytime that we have 2 numbers together, that means we're playing those together. So at least in the very beginning, in that 0, 0, it's a quick strum right there, the middle 2. But let's not focus right now on having both of those. So you can either choose to do, you can forget about one of the lines basically. So let's forget about this line and just focus on playing this line. So what this is telling me is I have to pluck the 4th string 1 time, just as an open. Okay? And then I can go ahead and place my finger there. Since the 3 is the lowest one, I want to make sure that my index is there because I don't need to go anywhere else here. So I can just go open, 3, 5, open. Three, 5, open. And I'm doing all this just on that single string, that single fourth string. And if you want to spice it up, you can hold your finger in both on both 3/3s and both 5/5s, which makes it sound more like the song itself. Any questions on that, at least that very first line, on what those numbers mean or anything like that? Alrighty. Is it confusing? That's my question too. Alrighty. That's good to hear, hopefully. So after we have that open, 3, 5, open, then we'll do the 3, 6, 5. You can use your pinky too, or you can move your whole hand too. Another kind of disadvantage of tabs is that it doesn't tell you the rhythm of when to play things. So this is really when you know the song and you're kind of a little bit more familiar with it, it does help. And
From
again,
just that series of double stops there, I'm trying to think what the interval is. Is it fourths, thirds, sixths? And I'm also wondering, from just that simple pared down series of notes, you should be able to hear where it resolves, and that should tell you what key this is in.
let's see, because I think, what is this? So, oh yeah, and the key is also shown there at the very top. Some people will go to the effort and put the key there.
Oh, okay. I was going to guess G, because that's where it feels resolved. If you just, stop on, well, the open.
Just because, yeah, at least in terms of music theory, that E minor there
is the relative minor.
Too, yeah. At least at this moment, I wouldn't, these are kind of ghost notes, the ones in parentheses, that they're played super, super lightly, like you don't even notice. But if you want to practice it, you can always hear the song and just go like. So that's kind of one way that tabs makes it easy to learn other songs that are more about riffs and like little things like that. So that's how you use tablature. So I'm gonna scroll down here. So this is kind of a little bit more advanced, but these 3, 5, 5s. Oh, I get to talk about power chords. Great. So power chords are basically, so we have a bar chord. It's okay if you don't know what a bar chord is, but it's basically taking out all that high notes of a bar chord. So in order to do that 3, 5, 5, we wouldn't want to go like 3, 5, 5 like that, because it's the same shape. So with kind of these style of songs, we can just keep that one single shape and just play that. So in order for me to do that, I'm gonna put my index finger on the 3rd fret of the 6th string. I'm gonna skip my middle finger. I'm gonna use my pinky on the 5th fret of the 5th string, and then my pinky on the 4th fret of the 5th fret. The 5th fret, 4th string. There you go. So it gives it this kind of almost Tetris-like shape. And if you want to have like a little bit more support, you can lean your middle finger more up. So that verse would go as once I have my shape up here, then it would go. Kind of like a nice little arpeggio there, at least in the beginning. And it's a nice little stretch to exercise. Let's see. So that's kind of important to kind of get accustomed to these kind of power chords, these 1, 2, 3s. Just because here, after we go 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, we have this 1, 2, 3. So it's just moving that same shape up. So it's exactly that same shape, but we just move it with this shape. You have a lot of possibilities, just because it's a really nice combination of notes that have to do with bar chords. So you can put this this shape almost anywhere in the guitar. And it will sound really, really nice. I kind of have this little example for my regulars now. But that's a good kind of technique to use those power chords, just because they also make your calluses and your fingers start to get used to grabbing multiple strings in different parts of the guitar neck right there. So it's all that same shape. Let's see. So I guess this is a part where I ask which song you would like me to find here. You can put it in the chat so that it comes into some kind of use into what your own thing. Any suggestions? That is not Campbell soup. Alrighty. John. Perfect. So I put in his name up here. And of course, Angel from Montgomery is #1 as his most popular song. So again, this is where I'll actually go into the chords too for a little bit, but the charts too. So I'm gonna go ahead and click the chords first, and then we'll go into the tab. Sometimes with these songs, with a lot of folk songs, there's not a lot of tablature that goes into it because it's all about strumming. But I'm just gonna go ahead and go here to Angel, the most stars. Our tuning is good. And here is our chord charts for it. And right at the very top here gives us that first G. So we start on that G, and it seems to just kind of transition between G, C, D, G. But there's not too much tablature here. But wants to sing it to me so I can remember a little bit. Alrighty, so let's actually see if I can find a tab version of this, just for our example. So I'm gonna go back, just hit tabs, and see if there's anything here. Alrighty, so looks like there is one official version. We don't have that, so let's go to the one with 0 stars, but let's just check it out and see what happens. Okay. So this is good because I'll just kind of go over some of the different ways that they write tabs. So this is probably for the very beginning intro, if I remember right. So with tablature, anytime we have this kind of little B into the 12, the B stands for bend. So at least in this example, if we have that 10, which is the second string in the 10th fret, it's kind of all the way up here. We strum it, and then we bend. So we bend by press after, and then we go down. So that's what a bend is. Anytime that you hit a string and then bend down afterwards. Because it's emulating the sound that you would get in the 12th. That's why it's a 10, 12 until you hit that. So that how that would sound would be. So after so that's what a bend is. This 7 and then an H and a 9, this means a hammer-on. A hammer-on is, let's say for example, I'm in that 7 and 9. So we play that 7, again, just single, and then we press with our ring finger down, and it creates this. So you can use that anywhere that you have. So that's what a hammer-on is. And sometimes there'll be a, let's just pretend this is a 9, a P, and a 7. So a pull-off is the opposite of a hammer-on. Instead of hammering on something, we are pulling off. So we're gonna start here. We're gonna keep our finger in the back, and we're gonna press that 9 and let go. But keep our finger behind. So that's the difference between a hammer-on and then a pull-off when we pull off something. And you can use these all over like the guitar too when you're practicing. So even when you're doing your, you can hammer on into the 2 and pull off back. Let's see, any questions on bends, hammer-ons or pull-offs? They're kind of a little bit more advanced, but I think they're really fun to play too. Just because you get a different sound of things. Questions? Alrighty. So this is kind of where the very first part here, the 3 0 0 0 3. So this reminds me very similarly of a G chord. So we can have our G shape and not play that. You can just have that as a G too. So this is where the time to practice at least your very basic chords comes in handy, because all that very first line is just quickly switching between chords. But at least in this instance, you know not to hit specific parts of the string, just because that's what kind of gives it that attitude and space when you're doing it. And I think that's the piano part too, so they switched the arrangement for the piano. if you want to have 3 guitars instead of 1 piano. Alrighty, any questions on at least tabs? It can be kind of a lot in the beginning to take in, just because there's a lot of different things. What's the one thing I wanted to show? Yes, twist and shout. I think there's that little solo in twist and shout that's good to start off with, or in the beginning too. So again, I put in twist and shout in the top. It gives me a bunch of different varieties, chords, but I'm looking again for tabs. So I'm gonna click on the tab that has the most stars, which is that 57 tabs. It gives me the lyrics. And then this is kind of neat too, because it gives me what both guitars are doing at the same time. It's out of here. So, for example, this is kind of like a little mess to look at in the beginning, but you can also focus on the chords up here at the top. So they're doing a variation of bar chords here. So let's not focus on that, but let's focus on this very first one, which is kind of split into 2. So it starts up with the song with 5, 7, 9 on that 6th string. So it would be do 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 do. Again, going down, do 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 do. 5, 7, 9 on the 6th string, and then 5. And then these 5, 7s, 3, 5s look very similar to our power chords we were talking about just a little bit ago, but we're not hitting that third string. So these are the more simplified versions of power chords where we're just having, let's say, for example, this very first one, the 5, 7, we would have our index finger on the 5 of the 5th string and then our ring finger on the 7 and hitting those at the same time. And again, I'm hitting those kind of rather quickly with my thumb there. Alrighty. So this is kind of a whole different beast of learning how to play music with numbers and lines. So it's okay if it kind of takes you a little bit, but I think once you start to get a little bit more advanced and you learn the basics of reading tabs, it's going to start to make a little bit of sense. Just because at least tabs to push you outside of, instead of just doing a lot of chords, into more individual kind of moving around the guitar. Alrighty. Any questions on this particular one? Alrighty. Let's see. I guess we can do one more suggestion in the chat if you want me to. We can do the flag declare. Yeah, I missed that in the chat with John Prime, so let me do that. Let's go back to another John Prime song. I'm probably butchering his name. There we go. So this one again looks like they don't have the tabs for it, but let's just click on the 93 stars with the chords and see if there's anything. Nope. Okay. So this is again all chords here. And it looks like this one also doesn't give us a strumming pattern. But let's see. Yes, so this is again one of those songs that really does focus more on this side of the hand. Actually, any problems with the strumming patterns that you've been having? If there's one that's been a little weird or that you're kind of struggling with, I'm going to go to the strumming pattern here, and let me explain it real quick for the newcomers. And I'm going to put this in the chat as well. So even though it says ukulele strumming pattern, this also works for guitar. So let's see. I guess that's it. Alrighty. So at the very top here, this is kind of a little quick review. So sometimes when we do like strum chords, full chords, we want to spice it up a little bit. So a lot of popular music goes 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the very first one, once we have a chord that we want to play, we want to count as 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's when we have one's full chord. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And anytime that we want to go up, those are the ands. So in line number 2, there's this little plus button with a little U. That means an up strum in between those 1, 2, 3, 4s. So how that would be, it would be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it repeats again. Again, anytime that you're doing kind of more up strums, try not to play all the 6 strings, but kind of focus on the first 3, just because it gives it a little more. This is an E minor chord. It gives it a little more. A little bit more brightness into it. Alrighty, I think I put that in the chat. Let's see if there's anything else. Trying to think of another good example for a tap song. It's a very simple guitar song. Well, actually, I'll leave this to questions for the last 12 minutes. If there is a song that you want to learn, that I can guide you through it right now so I can hear it real quick and see how it's supposed to sound played. Alrighty, so we have a question about how do you do a bar chord. Alrighty, so let me go here into this other sheet that I will link in the chat. So a bar chord is when you press down a whole line of strings in one fret with just one finger. So I'm gonna take this A major as an example. So we have this 5 there, which indicates that this is the 5th fret, and the 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, which indicates that that's our whole finger there. At least in the beginning, it's a little tricky. This is a very kind of just a matter of keep pressing down and practicing. I would actually practice the minors first, just because you can use your middle finger to help press down the whole line there. Let's say I'm in the 5th, that whole line there. And I'm also kind of pinching on the side here as well. So that whole pinch. So once you kind of have that pinch, you have your finger that's kind of rolled to its side and pinched and helped with that middle finger. Then I would go one by one down until all the notes are bright and there's no clankiness to it. This will take a very long time. It's not the next day to the next day, but you'll start to realize that sometimes you don't need too much pressure to really push down everything. And just kind of mess around with putting less pressure, more pressure, moving your kind of finger aside. But I kind of always go like right above that metal line, kind of always. And roll my finger towards the neck and then practice. And after I have that down, then I can add that 3 and 4 on that to complete it. Because once you have that kind of mentality, that technique of just holding one thing, then you can really move that around those shapes. And again, once you're practicing, make sure that all the notes sound bright. Alrighty. Any other questions?
I hesitate, but I'll throw this out. In that last song you illustrated, you begin with a G, and then it goes to a C.
Yes.
And then, oh, I want the one after that. Anyway, and then it went to a B flat major. So if it was, yeah, right. If it was in the standard diatonic series progression, it would dictate a B minor. But it substitutes a flat. And which, you know, our Western ear is accustomed to hearing, so it doesn't offend us at all. But it's a chord substitution, and I can't remember what's the rule for that allows you to break out of the B minor and plug in that B flat. It's
that's a great question, which I have some great news that for future programs, I will have somebody too co-hosting with me that's way more knowledgeable about music theory, especially with folk music.
okay.
So hopefully the next time I can get your question answered, because he would probably know the answer to that.
Okay. But if you take this A shape C instead of string C, then you just slide the whole thing back.
Yeah.
So mechanically, yeah. Mechanically, it makes sense, but musically, it does to my ear. But I'm not sure what the rule for chord substitution is.
If you want to switch it up, I mean, not everything is set in stone. Kind of my thing. If you think that it sounds better, or that's kind of the thing with music, though, right? If you think that it's let's see, is there something I didn't put on the chat? Let me see. Strumming patterns. Oh, the chord chart, I believe. Alrighty, I know this kind of session was a little all over the place just because I wanted to try something a little bit different. But thank you for hanging on there. Any other last questions or something that you want me to focus on for next time?
There was some notice we received from the library about changing the schedule, and
Yes. So since at least in my branch, we're gonna start doing trainings and we're gonna get assigned different schedules. I can't do Thursdays anymore because I'll be working Thursday through Saturday. So I'm still gonna be working from home Monday through Wednesday. So that's why I decided to change the schedule to Tuesdays at 2 p.m. from now on. Just because it unfortunately didn't fit in my schedule, and hopefully that doesn't.
beginning with the next meeting or beginning in July?
With the next meeting. So this will be the last meeting that's 4 p.m.
Tuesday, 2 o'clock.
Yes.
See you then.
Perfect. Any other last questions? I'm going to put my email in the chat. So you can always email me if you want me to find resources for you. If you're having trouble with songs. Recently, if you're playing ukulele, we just got a bunch of new materials in our electronic books too. So that's nice. I don't know. I haven't checked if there's new guitar stuff, but I'm a real advocate for Ultimate Guitar just because you can find almost anything here in terms of songs. Last questions before we end the session. Alrighty. Once again, I want to thank everybody, unless there's something else new. Yes, so we meet every other week. So before we changed our session, it was Thursdays at 4, but now we're going to start meeting Tuesdays at 2. So next week is ukulele at 2 p.m. And then the week after that will be the 30th. So our next session will be the 30th at 2 p.m. And then since it's been kind of nice because a lot of people now have been coming online regular, so we can really tailor to what you're trying to learn to. And if we want to focus on something else different as well. Alrighty, unless there's any other questions, I'd like to thank everybody. Stay cool. My hair tells me to stay cool too. And I hope to see you all in a little less than 2 weeks from now.
Thank you, Freddie.
You're welcome. Have a great one, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.